So we are page Samar Zayin, the bottom Oislamet base. And in this Ois, the Rebbe begins to explain that the fact that the Oiros are mislabish in the Kelim is not only due to the fact that they be drawn out from their source, but because in the source itself they already have a certain relationship to spheres. These oiros are not super oiros that represent exclusively the etzem. There is an element of spheres in the oiros. And because of that, when they come into the kelim, there is an affinity there. And that's why Al-Dei HaKelim, this is the third line from the top, from the Al-Dei HaKelim, not in Bechinas Metzias. Through the Kelim, they become Bechinas Metzias in a Metzias level, because there is an inherent tendency and a content of Metzias in the Oiros. Ukmeshin is boil yil perik yud gimel. At the end of the third line, as we explained earlier, beinyan Hillel and Shammai. It describes the union of Hillel and Shammai. What was the principle of a Hillel and Shammai discussion? Hillel and Shammai were students, were Talmidim by Shmaya and Avtaly'on. Shmaya Avtaly'on taught both Hillel and Shammai. And there was no distinction at that point between Hillel and Shammai. By the time it came to Hillel and Shammai, they became quite diverse. Hillel tended towards chesed, and Shammai tended towards gevurah, and so forth. This tendency in Hillel and Shammai, this materialized after the hashpoah of Shmaya Avtaly'on came down to Hillel and Shammai. So one would think that the reason that all of a sudden this sphirot that they receive from Shmaya Avtaly'on is no longer at its lofty level, that includes everything, but it becomes identified with chesed or gevurah, it is due to the fact that it came into the seichel of Hillel and Shammai. So we explained in Perek Yud Gimel, this is what the line is, Hillel and Shammai, fourth line. So we said, Hasvares etzlam, that the svares that they learned from Shmaya Avtaly'on, etzlam, by them, by Hillel and Shammai, Heima b'bchinas chesed and gevurah mamash. The svares by them are in chesed and gevurah mamash, in a true distinction between chesed and gevurah, not so to speak a potential, but the actual distinct. Hillel and Shammai differed between from each other. One saw it one way, one saw it another way. It was a real distinction. So where is this distinction come from? So we explained. Again at the end of the fourth line, that although that this came to be, Basel goes home at the point of their comprehension, of Hillel and Shammai comprehension, that one grasps, recognizes this one leheter to chesed, to the permissible side, and the other one grasps the same svara to the opposite, to the prohibition side, gevurah. And this is due to the fact that Hillel and Shammai themselves differ. They had this tendency. Hillel had the tendency towards chesed, and Shammai had the tendency towards gevurah. So you would think that this svara is transformed at the point when it comes to Hillel's seichel and Shammai's seichel. The svara itself is completely neutral to that. It's above that. But when it comes to Hillel and Shammai, that's when it becomes transformed. So he explained in the Kalmokai, he said, no, that's not essentially the entire explanation. It is true that it occurs at the point when Hillel and Shammai grasp this svara. The Kalmokai is still, okay, everybody has a place. This is the fifth line from the top, from the beginning of that. Mikomokim still. Hasiva lozeh. The real cause for this diversion between Hillel and Shammai is that the same svara, the same intelligent concept, can be interpreted in totally two different opposite ways. The real cause for that is mipnei shesvaras harab. It is due to the fact that the svara and the concept that the Rav himself produces of Shmaya Avtaly'on koileles already incorporates chesed gevurah be'atzma, chesed gevurah be'atzma internally to itself, b'halem, but in a very subtle manner. In a very subtle manner, this svara, although we're talking about Shmaya Avtaly'on, which are above the distinction of chesed and gevurah, nonetheless, inherently there is already an element of chesed and gevurah, b'halem, in a subtle manner. Al-kain, and thus, Baso Gosom, Bibchinis Chesed and Gevurah B'mtzias Mamash. Baso Gosom, at the level of their comprehension of Hillel and Shammai, when it descends further, there the content and the tendency of the svara becomes fully active. B'mchinas Chesed and Gevurah Mamash, B'mtzias Mamash, a real Chesed and Gevurah. It is no longer that lofty svara as it is by Shmaya Avtaly'on, but now this svara is actually saying chesed and gevurah. Okay, so this was used. The phenomenon of Hillel and Shammai is being used to demonstrate the principle. Namely, that by Hillel and Shammai, the svara diverge. Hillel sees it one way and Shammai sees it another way. And this divergence is not only due to Hillel and Shammai, but it is due also because the svara, the original svara already contains in it, in a subtle manner, the chesed and gevurah elements. So therefore, when it comes to Hillel and Shammai, the chesed aspect surfaces more distinctly, and by Shammai, the gevurah aspect surfaces more distinctly. But if it were not for the fact that in the svara itself there is this subtle content, then it would not find this divergence, and it would not be able to fit into Hillel and Shammai's seichel in such perfect settlement. It settles in because it inherently can relate to both of these perspectives.
The fact does seem to be that and I think we had this conversation before, but the fact does seem to be that at the level of their masters, the masters of Hillel and Shammai, the outlook there was some kind of blend or some kind of union between chesed and gevurah.
No. Not a blend and not a union, but something superior to chesed and gevurah.
Sphirot.
Something nothing to do with midas. Something is pure intellect.
Okay, so within that, okay, now our point here is that within that purity there was already a nascent, potential level
of midas, of chesed and gevurah, and that's why that surfaces when it comes into the level of Hillel and Shammai.
Right, and we don't have to get into this because I remember we touched on it last time. I'm still not clear. It does seem though that from that, call it higher point of truth, devolved to limited perspectives, namely Hillel and Shammai, that do not contain the fullness or the purity of their master.
That's right. But it surfaces by Hillel and Shammai only due to the fact that it is inherently contained within the original sphirot.
Right. That's our main point here. But this fact that it looks as if each of them only has part of the picture, we don't have to get into it. But it does seem like a strange phenomenon.
Okay, so I was thinking. As a matter of fact, this talk came to me last night. A means for us at our very coarse level to relate to this principle. It's an interesting thing. Lately we've been discussing this quite often. The assembly line production method that was identified by Ford, and he created a very efficient way of producing cars. It's called the assembly line. He said like this: to produce a car, you need X number of steps. Clearly, a car is produced from little screws and little gadgets, and when you connect them all together in the proper way, the car runs. Now the question is to get all of these gadgets and connect them in the proper way, and that is very time consuming. So he created an assembly line. Assembly line means that there's a conveyor that moves the car from one station to the other. Each station supplies a certain screw into this assembly. And this man who is manning this station, he has only one function. When the conveyor belt brings the car to him, he picks up the screw, puts it in and screws it in. Almost robotic action. Not exactly, but basically that's the concept. And this was it's a very efficient way of producing, of course, because he doesn't have to look, what am I supposed to do next? It's exactly there. And everything comes in the right time, in the right sequence, because the screws cannot be put in out of sequence. One has to be put in before the other. And the conveyor belt brings it all in the proper sequence. And as a result of that, there was an amazing accomplishment. Every 7 minutes, a car would roll off the assembly line. A car consists of thousands of little screws. Every 7 minutes, another car rolls off. So this was an excellent thing. However, it was discovered, as time went on, that these cars had a certain imperfection in them, in one place or another place. And it was a standard procedure that when you buy a car, a brand new car from a dealer, you schedule right away the first monthly visit, the second monthly visit, to iron out certain kinks that you accumulate. Make a record of all different the malfunctions of the car, bring it to the dealer, and he corrects these malfunctions. It was an accepted procedure. that within the first month you have to bring the car back and give them a list what malfunctions you have noticed. Now, clearly, if a car is initially produced with a malfunction, it's considered a lemon. This lemon cannot be totally eliminated because it's a whole assembly. If initially the assembly was not put together correctly, 100%, there's going to be a limping element. This is exactly what happened. These cars, they worked, but they had a 2-3 year lifespan. And even during this whole time, they had to have maintenance all the time. Then came the Japs. And they studied they saw the whole world arena of cars. They entered into the car business. A very daring feat to compete with Ford and General Motors. Nonetheless, they entered into it. And very successfully. To the extent, originally they said, oh, this is the Japanese garbage, and they overtook the market. How did they overtake the market? What did they alter from the American model? They said, the assembly line does not work. Because when a person puts in a screw and is not involved in building a car, he's involved only in putting in the screw, it's not going to be, he doesn't have a feel for it, it's not going to be correct. So they created a new model. This model is what's called a group, a team. They have a team of people. They produce one car at a time. But this team is responsible for this car. Whatever time it takes, they all produce a car, not putting in screws. And that worked much better. These cars were error-free. And the whole business of a first month visit, second month, it was eliminated. It doesn't exist. Because they were producing a car, not putting in screws. Can you project the idea here? Even a human being who is also very limited, he knows exactly what it means to put in a screw. Nonetheless, there's a spirit behind putting in the screw that has to have a broader and a truer relationship to putting in the screw. Then it'll happen correctly. So, using this analogy, Shmaya and Avtaly'on had their sphirot that spoke about a complete reality. Not how this will function under these circumstances or under these circumstances. A divine reality. That's what seichel is. And this is what they were talking about. That included every facet, every phase of that design, of that sphirot. Chesed, gevurah, tiferes, anything. Because it spoke about a higher truth, a divine truth. Which speaks of the reality of it. Reality includes everything. Reality means that it has a divine truth, a divine presence. Divine presence is not limited to one aspect or another. It's not a composite of many details. It's a spirit of one truth. When this came down to Hillel and Shammai, they were not capable at the level to grasp this divine truth directly. So by them it came out in the form of different details. This one took it from this perspective, this one took it in this perspective. So now we are saying like this. Yes, indeed, they took it, Hillel and Shammai took it from different perspectives. But the reason that they were able to identify so well their individual perspectives is because these perspectives were initially in the sphirot of Shmaya and AYIN were also contained therein. Using the analogy of the car assembly, yes, you're producing a car, but it is understood that a car consists of X number of screws. You're not thinking about it. You're thinking of the whole car. But nonetheless, within that is contained the principle that it's a composition.
In a certain way, this by using the mashal of the assembly line, it almost makes it stronger. It almost makes the point that Hillel and Shammai were losing the bigger picture and had a specific detail. Or as it was said a moment ago, they stepped away from or were not within the same reality as their masters, right?
Right.
Okay.
Right. But the reason that they were able to cull their reality out of the teaching of their master is because within the teaching of the master, their specific points were contained.
Yes. Okay. And hence they're both authentic, and they were not in conflict with each other. Correct? They
were in conflict. One saw it one way, one saw it the other way.
But it was a scholarly conflict, or they were
right. Of course, a conflict.
Yeah.
But they both were drawn from the same truth, because in that truth, both of them are present.
Yes, and each acknowledges that the other is a faithful student of their master. Or?
This is not our concern. Yeah, of course.
Okay. Okay, we don't have to spend more time on it, but just now and the last time it came up, it just seems so much like Yeridas or Doiros or things devolving to a level where they're no longer within the reality, the Nakuda where they started from.
Yep.
Okay. Okay.
The Gemara says, there was Rabbeinu HaKodesh, everybody knows what Rabbeinu HaKodesh is, Rebbe, who compiled the Mishnayos. So Rebbe said, the reason that I'm sharper, that I'm smarter than my colleagues, is that when we were sitting and listening to the shir of our Rebbe, Reb Meir, I was close enough, and when sitting in a proper angle, I was able to see Reb Meir directly. I was able to see Reb Meir as he's giving the shir, and therefore I got a different richness in my absorption. And he says, I was only able to see him from his back.
Mm.
And if I was to see him from the front, I would have been even smarter.
Yeah.
Okay, I think this is it for this morning, and hopefully we'll resolve the dilemma of our